going to. I guess one of the nice things too about especially like Toler's side of the field is that, you know, the Pokemon are so bulky that you don't like need to commit to like the really aggressive setup. But you do have to lead in such a way that you're not just allowing Annihilate in particular to get rolling easily. I was gonna say, I think we're almost certainly gonna see Flamigo, where almost all of the Pokemon that it's sort of designed to beat are on this team, though it's not going to enjoy immediately leading off against this Incineroar.
It is not going to enjoy it, but its Scrappy ability does mean it will not be intimidated by the opposing Incineroar. Annihilate will be that partner Pokemon, and then for Toler, it's the Golden Go alongside the Flamigo.
Yeah, so I guess there's the option of like trying to double the Flamigo, although I think you're probably just short of being able to pick up a knockout, and you don't want to just ignore a Golden Go. And I guess that's some of the fun of Flamigo, right? Where just does a good job of attracting attention, you know, threatens so much damage, and nearly all the Pokemon of this core between fighting and flying. I think every Pokemon, but Primarina is weak against one of its attacks. Can't say that about too many Pokemon.
No, and it's also interesting to me as well, you have this interplay between the Golden Go and the Annihilate and the Incineroar on the other side of that. If Golden Go is allowed to connect a Shadow Ball to a Ghost-type Annihilate, that would have done a potentially knockout amount of damage, but this time around, Riley will be locking into a Terastallization turn 1 into that Fire typing, so it won't take that super effective damage. We'll be firing off a Rage Fist into the Golden Go, and because it has not taken any hits yet, it is at the lowest possible base power. One hit from close combat is all that's needed to pick up the KO on the opposing Incineroar, though, and I think that's a great trade for Toler. Riley, interestingly enough, not opting to go for Fake Out, and Golden Go going to start things off slower, avoiding targeting that Annihilate to boost Rage Fist and instead boosting its own stats with a Nasty Plot.
Yeah, it's a critical way of how you play against Annihilate, right? You can't just whittle it down most of the time. You got to be careful about how you deal with it. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good first turn for Toler. You know, there's an option now for Riley where if you have something like the Whimsicott, he can get speed control or whatever, but actually taking advantage of that would be pretty tricky. You know, you didn't break the Focus Sash on this Flamigo, who's again looking very threatening and probably at a point now where it could potentially knock out either of these Pokemon. In order to try to prevent that, now there's the threat of yet another Fake Out here, but it's still got to like position to actually deal with the Flamigo at some point. At least one of the nice things about Rillaboom is that even though, you know, it does not want to take another attack from the Flamigo and get chunked by Brave Bird, at least even if like you were to like protect a Fake Out, at least you still have Grassy Glide to get the Focus Sash. But Riley's gonna have to make some moves now. He's at an early deficit.
For sure. Golden Go will take this opportunity to Terastallize into a Dragon type. Will no longer be taking super effective damage from Rage Fist, and given how much damage it took previously, it would most likely take another hit. But whoa, here we go. Riley using the priority of his own attack to boost Rage Fist's power, and that boost makes it enough to pick up the KO on Golden Go. Had he doubled into Golden Go with the Grassy Glide, I don't think that would have been enough damage.
Yeah, 4 more damage that way. Does everything he can to reduce the damage of his self-hit. Not going to be able to do anything to reduce the damage of that Brave Bird, allowing Flamigo to pick out its second one-hit KO of the battle. But a clever little move there, right? You know, we talked about Beat Up as a means of increasing Annihilate's damage, but you can do that with any move, you know, not taking really any meaningful damage from the resisted Grassy Glide. And quickly, Riley is down to 2 Pokemon, but he does have Annihilate slowly scaling its Rage Fist at least.
With Golden Go as your last Pokemon as well, you have some opportunity here to allow that Annihilate to scale. Flamigo, you have to be careful because Flamigo with Scrappy can hit that Golden Go super effectively, and given the presence of Porygon 2, you have to assume that Trick Room is a very tempting option for Toler here.
Yeah, sort of an interesting spot though, right? Porygon, after Terastallization, has committed sort of a not great final Pokemon to have perhaps against the Annihilate because you can Drain Punch it to get your HP back. And Golden Go gonna protect itself, allowing it bulk up now as the Annihilate continues to try to scale.
Again, Riley taking advantage of these passive turns, recognizing that Golden Go is the more tempting target for that Flamigo with a close combat. Porygon 2 ending the turn with Trick Room. The biggest question I have at this point in time is Annihilate is at +1 defense. It has Rage Boost boosted already because it's taken a couple of hits. It has that attack boost as well, and it's at full health. I'm very curious how Toler tries to navigate through this, and if there's a way he has a one-hit knockout on that Pokemon.
Yeah, it could be a tricky spot now, and you know, now that Golden goes in the Trick Room, you know, perhaps be able to be safe from Flamigo for a single turn. You know, it's broken its own Focus Sash by using Brave Bird, and while that knockout was very valuable, you know, it's sort of one of the key Pokemon perhaps that could help deal with this Annihilate. We'll have to see what Toler's final Pokemon is, but you know, maybe Annihilate will be able to handle this one kind of on its own.
It's going to be close for sure. Porygon 2 will try and start chipping away at that Annihilate with a Terra Blast, but every single hit you make with Annihilate means it's going to get even stronger. Make It Rain is enough to pick up the KO on the opposing Flamigo, and Golden Go was slower than Flamigo in Trick Room. Drain Punch will connect with that Porygon 2, pick up the KO, and I think most importantly of all, provide Annihilate with a lot of health recovery, especially after the grassy terrain in between turns. It's going to be basically at full health.
Yeah, as an Annihilate's been out here the whole battle, but things are looking okay, right? Had that early deficit, looked like Riley might get Flamingo, but instead, we do see the Ursaluna coming out, and okay, well, it's a perfect final Pokemon, right? Still a whole bunch of Trick Room turns left. The Ursaluna not yet burned, but does have the type advantage. We see Toler helpfully hovering the Trick Room for us. There's 3 turns remaining, so perhaps enough time to get burned and then to smack both of these ground-weak Pokemon.
It is a tough position to be in, though, because without the Terastallization, you do have to worry about taking a Drain Punch from the Annihilate. Obviously, Annihilate can hit you either way with super effective damage, and I guess it is fortunate for Toler that because it's still a normal type Ursaluna, Rage Fist will not do any damage there. But with 2-on-1 in this situation, and without the Guts already being active, going on the offensive here is certainly a call, and it looks like, given Headlong Rush was able to pick up the KO on the Annihilate in that one hit, could be a call that pays off for Toler.
Yeah, I mean, going for the Headlong Rush, it does no Earthquake, but because it's not burned, needs that extra damage. Make sure it takes care of that Annihilate. And the Golden Go going for the nasty plot, perhaps predicting that the Ursaluna would go for a Protect to activate its Flame Orb instead. Really getting burned there, because now the Ursaluna will literally get burned and have 2 turns to try to knock out this Golden Go. Assume the only out for Riley now is you Protect twice. You hope you get the double Protect, because if you don't, Ursaluna easily going to pick up this knockout on the final turn of Trick Room.
The benefit of going for Headlong Rush for Riley is that the special defense of that Ursaluna was dropped one stage as well. So given all the boosts and dropped in play right now, this Golden Go does have a decent shot of landing a Make It Rain for a one-hit KO. But the big question here, like you just said, Scott, is can you get the double Protect? Can you power through Trick Room? And can Golden Go attack first?
Yeah, you'd assume both Pokemon able to easily knock one another out. So Ursaluna going to be much slower in Trick Room. We'll have to see what happens. Riley's going to cross its fingers, and the double Protect does not succeed.
It's a 1 in 3 chance, and unfortunately for Riley, did not come through this time around. Another Headlong Rush is more than enough damage to pick up the one-hit knockout on the opposing Golden Go, and Toler is 1 win away from moving on to top 8 of this competition in Baltimore. But Riley, certainly a player who knows how to adjust, especially when put on the back foot.
Yeah, exciting first game there. It comes down to a very easy to math out percentage there. Both players pretty good shot of winning that first game on the final turn, but Toler able to pull out after pulling an early advantage with the Flamigo.
Exactly, and going into game number 2, you have to assume Riley will account for that Flamigo a little bit better in his approach. I mean, if we go back to the replay from that game number 1, leading the Flamigo, having that instant pressure, no fake out onto that Pokemon to flinch it, as it just wasn't really worth it at that point in time, really made it difficult for him to navigate.
Yeah, although you got to keep in mind too, it was just that close where, yeah, I mean, I think you're Annihilate protecting instead of trying to attack on that turn of Trick Room that Ursaluna first came out away from winning the game probably. So Toler hits the read that really matters there, and then also avoids falling into the double protect. A really exciting game here where 2 of the best trainers in the region showing why.
Yeah, and as this replay goes through as well, listen closely, y'all, because we actually are going to hear the players themselves as they react to one of the final turns of this game. All right, give it 1 more second, y'all. I promise it's coming. But the other thing that was great, here we go. Good game, very well played. I mean, these are 2 trainers who know just what that end game was, and it was a roll at the end of the day. And I think one of the great things about Pokemon, especially when you're playing at this high of a level, is that you can recognize when they are those rolls and just appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah, I mean, Hey, it's sometimes it's the right move, right? Where
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the thing. Sometimes it's a probability management game, right? You'd love to just make awesome reads and just pick up an easy knockout and win decisively. But when you get to this point in the tournament, the margins are always going to be thin. Both trainers kind of realizing the right way to close the game out there. Where Riley got his spot where, hey, as soon as I lost the Annihilate, the best I can do is try to get out of Trick Room, and he almost made it there. But we see as the trainers get into this game, there's a more similar strategy from Toler, and on the other side of the field, Riley happening to use that Whimsicott that we were talking about so much in the pregame.
I was going to say, we saw Riley try and set up the Annihilate in game number 1 with a Grassy Glide from his own Rillaboom. I think an easy adjustment to make in game number 2 is you just threaten a huge amount of damage right off the bat. As long as you still have 4 Pokemon in your party, Beat Up will hit once per each Pokemon that has not fainted. So that is a huge jump in base power potential from Riley this turn. Toler has to respond.
Yeah, sort of a tricky situation, too, where, one of the weaknesses of it does only attack a single target. There are 2 Pokemon potentially threatening a lot of damage on Toler's side of the field. So, do you read that? You just get to protect Tailwind maybe on the other side of the field, and it's all for nothing. A lot of different things could happen here, so sort of a tricky turn to play out. Toler being a little defensive here, getting the Porygon 2 in order to try and get the Trick Room up and avoid any potential Tailwind shenanigans.
Moonblast is the move of choice from this Whimsicott, bringing the Flamigo down to its Focus Sash. Whimsicott has a surprising amount of special attack at the end of the day, and while it is not enough to prevent damage going down on this Annihilate from a close combat from this scrappy Flamigo, it is going to be enough to ensure that another attack from either of Riley's 2 Pokemon is enough to remove it from the field, and Rage Fist is going to be the attack of choice to pick up that KO.
No knockouts for Flamigo this time. Riley's saying enough of that. I can't just allow this one Pokemon to run over my team, and that winds up being a pretty decent trade for him. Now, end up the situation where Ursaluna gets to come out in the field. Certainly clear what Toler would like to do here, right? With one of the slowest Pokemon in the game and a Pokemon that knows Trick Room. So now it is up to the Annihilate and the Whimsicott to try to stop that, right? You could use Beat Up to power up the Rage Fist, but the Rage Fist isn't going to do anything to Porygon, who could still easily Trick Room in front of that, and then perhaps try to help Ursaluna take out the Annihilate inside Trick Room before it's able to use a powerful Rage Fist on anything or to Drain Punch the more critical Ursaluna.
It's a tough spot for sure, and I think to Toler's benefit, I mean, we saw how impactful Trick Room was in game number 1 for him, and in game number 2, because Annihilate hasn't gotten that bulk up in yet, there really is no opportunity for it to deal damage to the Porygon to stop a Trick Room.
This is an incredibly bold play by Toler there. I don't know if you saw when he locked in, but
no, I was waiting.
Yeah, they kind of realize that Riley knows that he needs to play this conservatively, and instead not playing it conservatively at all. Protect,
right.
What's that? Don't know her.
Well, I'm not sure what Protect is. Just kidding, I do know. But Drain Punch will not be stopped by a Protect. We'll be doing some damage into the opposing Ursaluna, earthquaking your own Porygon 2. Not a bad decision at the end of the day for Toler, as it doesn't do much damage to the Porygon 2, but does do a decent chunk to a now Incineroar and still that Annihilate on Riley's side of the field.
A fun little play there, right? Where maybe it doesn't matter a whole lot that it took that extra damage. So instead, chipping Incineroar enough that another Earthquake later in the game, even if Intimidated, will probably pick up a knockout. Get a little more damage of an Annihilate. Rage Fist doesn't really matter here, since 2 of the Pokemon on his team are immune to it anyway, and the other one is going to get knocked out if it gets caught by it either way. So hey, why not? Bold play, but never know when a little bit of damage is going to make all the difference, especially because in this matchup, Toler's going to get 1 Trick Room almost for sure. Got to make the most of it.
Riley has to find his way through the next Trick Room turns, and admittedly, I think one thing players will do in this position is they will use Fake Out, they will use Protect as a way to sort of buy some time. Given that Riley has Fake Out available to him, I think the prediction that Toler makes here is, okay, you're going to Fake Out, maybe potentially even attack my Ursaluna, which is exactly why I send in the Golden Go, who's not going to be taking damage from a fighting type attack from that Annihilate. Riley goes for the Terrestrialization here onto the Incineroar, going to be turning into a Ghost-type Pokemon so that it doesn't take any damage from the, guess what, the normal-type Terra Blast on this Porygon 2. So both of these trainers know their type charts and using it to their advantage to dodge almost any damage this turn. The Annihilate picking the correct target in that Porygon 2 with Drain Punch.
Yeah, I think this is way advantage Riley. Not only is Annihilate get even healthier, but really the end game here, if you're Riley, you really just need to stall up this Trick Room, right? You still have all your Pokemon remaining. You need to get through this safely, and I think Incineroar getting that Terastallization is actually a big deal. Dodging the Terra Blast is great, but I think what's really critical is now if Incineroar leaves battle, since it's no longer weak against that Earthquake, it could potentially switch back in even after the Guts boost and maybe survive it because it's flipped the type chart and get that one more Intimidate off, but fake out again, at which point you've almost certainly survived that Trick Room. On the flip side, now that Go is out there threatening all this damage, it is weak against both of these Pokemon, but maybe it creates an opportunity where Porygon could go for a recover and try to get himself healthy enough to use Trick Room again later.
Really, trying to get healthy enough to use Trick Room later is Toler's only option here, as, Terra Blast cannot do any damage anymore, and while we see it go for an Ice Beam into this Incineroar, actually that Ice Beam did a decent chunk of damage and would be a 2-hit knockout on the Incineroar at this point in time. We see one Pokemon target down the Go on Riley's side of the field, and I believe that was that Incineroar.
Yeah, not a bad little trait there for Toler. Again, you're losing Trick Room turns. Not like a huge amount of damage, but it does certainly get Incineroar weak enough that if it switches into almost any attack, it'll be knocked out now, which makes it a little bit easier. The threat of a second fake out is pretty low, and now maybe you have Go potentially pinning Annihilate, pending the Pokemon speeds. You have Porygon pinning the Incineroar, and hey, maybe you're getting somewhere.
I also feel like since Porygon 2 is it's the slowest Pokemon on the field, but it's the fastest Pokemon in the Trick Room world, knowing that you are going to be moving first, it does mean you can put off using this recover for a couple more turns and just save it for when you actually need it to ensure that Porygon 2 will remain healthy enough, again, for a potential Trick Room later. We see Riley switch out the Incineroar and reveal that Rillaboom is his final choice for this match, and actually this is going to be a double switch, so the Rillaboom and the Whimsicott will be out on the field side by side with each other. Ice Beam from that Porygon 2 finds a better target into the opposing Rillaboom. Shadow Ball from the Go will connect with the opposing Whimsicott, leaving it down in the red.
Hey, again, another turn where it's not the worst thing in the world for Riley, right? You have to give them some resources. That's sort of the nature of Trick Room, but Porygon still not able to use a big sort of forced, or not fake out, recover, sort of forced to keep attacking an event. Incineroar slot does get a nice bit of damage in the Rillaboom, but Toler really couldn't make a read there, right? Even if he wanted to, it would have been so dangerous if just, Riley just stayed in. He would have instantly lost the game if his Pokemon getting attacked. Instead, kind of having to play this out, and, we're almost through the Trick Room now without anything really have happened.
You say without anything really have happened, but I do wonder if Porygon 2 has taken enough damage overall to prevent more Trick Room from happening, which would be the best possible outcome for Riley. Yeah,
I think, to me, you probably sacrifice Rillaboom here in order to continue stopping that recover, and then you get in a situation where once the Trick Room expires, you're actually looking pretty good.
Well, with a fake out onto the opposing Porygon 2, Shadow Ball will be the only attack to target this Assault Vest Rillaboom on Riley's side of the field, and that alone is not enough damage to pick up that KO. So here we are. There's going to be a little bit more recovery on the field from these Pokemon, but with the Trick Room turns winding down, Riley has found an out to keep his speed on his side and stop the Porygon 2. With so much damage, you have to assume Woodhammer should be enough to pick up the KO, especially with a little chip from Moonblast.
Yeah, you always got to be pretty happy when your opponent gets Trick Room up and it expires and you still have all 4 Pokemon remaining.
Yeah.
That will likely not be true after this turn, where potentially threatening a knockout on both of these Pokemon, but there's a world where, hey, maybe you pick up a knockout on Porygon and get a Tailwind for your final Pokemon. Hope you can close out the game out in that 2v2.
Toler has to find a way to get Trick Room back on the field so that the Ursaluna in the back of his party will have a way to victory. Tailwind first from this Whimsicott will be setting things up for the Pokemon in the back of Riley's party, and here comes that Woodhammer onto the Porygon 2. It falls short of the knockout. Make It Rain from Go will knock out both Rillaboom and Whimsicott, and Porygon 2, hanging on with just a sliver of health, has found an opportunity to twist the dimensions once more. And honestly, with the Tailwind setup now, that's even better for Toler.
Yeah, I guess we would be moving first anyway, but we'll potentially really be moving first, assuming it is the Trick Room we see, and there it goes. Porygon just barely surviving. Riley betrayed by his own grassy terrain, healing up the Porygon just enough that it was able to survive and use that Trick Room. Now that Ursaluna looning in the back is looking awfully scary.
the Annihilate and the Incineroar will be returning to the field for Riley. And while they are still relatively healthy, while this Incineroar will have the opportunity to at least flinch the Porygon 2 this turn, there's only so much Riley can do in this position.
Yeah, I mean, because we've seen before, either of these Pokemon can now attack the Incineroar slot. It does not have Protect. Pick up a knockout there, and it's Annihilate versus the world with an awful lot of Trick Room turns to try to survive. Really great spot now for Toler. Porygon surviving that Woodhammer was just huge, and it looks like he could be very close to moving on to the top 8 of this first regional of the season.
With Ursaluna in the back for Toler, we've seen how much Headlong Rush does into the opposing Annihilate when it has Terrastalized. It hasn't Terrastalized yet, but on the other hand, there wasn't Guts in play that previous time either. There's no more options for an Intimidate onto that Pokemon. So even though there are 2 special attackers on the field right now for Riley, and even though one of those special attackers is only going to be attacking this turn, Toler correctly picks the target of that Incineroar to connect a Shadow Ball with for the knockout. It is just Annihilate standing in the way of Toler from making top 8 in the first regional of the season.
Yeah, now it's kind of been the hero of its set. It almost was able to knock out all the Pokemon at Toler's side of the field last game. Going to be a little trickier this time. I was a little surprised to see the Protect there. I felt like Ian, removing Incineroar was sort of the safest path forward. But hey, that's one turn of Trick Room down. Maybe somehow Annihilate can find a way.
I know Baltimore is the city of believing, but it looks like Toler has found a way to make it into top 8 of this competition, beating Riley Factura, another previous regional champion along the way. Congratulations to both of these trainers, as that was an incredibly well-played set. And, Toler, I think one of the people who first believed in the Flamigo in particular, and just paying off incredibly well for him in his tournament run.
Yeah, Flamigo was great in that set, right? I mean,
yeah.
You see more directly contributing that first game, picking up a couple of big knockouts, but I feel like even in the second game, sometimes it's fine, if a Pokemon doesn't pick up a bunch of knockouts because it